Hi everybody. Hope your ceramics lab goes well. My teammates and I are just gonna show you a few tips and tricks that we have after running this lab. So,
Oh, there we go.
alrighty, so we had 10-gram samples and we realized that we did not need nearly that many. So I think you could probably have that. You could plan so that each of your bars would weigh around 5 grams. You should try to make as many bars as you can because we aimed for 30, and by the time we got done pressing bars, we had 12. Because some broke during sintering and some broke when we were pressing them. So just try to make as many as you can. One of the mistakes that we made is that when we were pressing the bars on the die press, we went with too low a pressure. We went at 2,500 PSI, and that introduced a lot of micro cracks into our bars, and they cracked during the sintering process. So, as you should try to press your bars with as high pressure as you can, around 5,000 PSI or greater, so that you can make your bars dense and eliminate the possibility of micro cracks forming. And when you're trying to get your bars out of the mold for the die press, don't use a hammer or a mallet to try to pound them out. They'll end up chipping. What we did use is we put these two blocks on either side of the mold, and then we pressed the mold, but the other way so that it like kind of popped the bar out of the mold, squeezed it back out. But just be careful with that because if you're not careful with that, that could also damage your bars. But we found that that was a lot more damaging. That was a lot less damaging than a hammer and mallet. And then the last thing is that you do need to measure the length, depth, and width post sintering. It's not super important to measure them before sintering, but post sintering, you're going to need that because those will be variables in an equation for you to convert force of fracture to flexural or bending strength for Weibull analysis. So that's some really important data that you're going to want to get, else you won't really be able to do your Weibull analysis that well. It'll just be a pretty rough estimation instead of more accurate.
And as for keeping track of measurements or notes, try to avoid as much of loss in materials as possible. Usually, when you're measuring the powder for each bar and transferring that from a container to the mold where you're trying to press it, you're gonna lose a little bit of material, so try to minimize that. Um, Also, try to keep track of like each bar. That's it's kind of gonna be a little bit harder because usually when you're pressing and sintering, they're bound to get sort of randomized, and you won't know which one. But trying to keep at least a record of where they're at, just to be more specific on which bars had which pressing or which sintering process. Uh it's not really required, but maybe adds more specifics to it. Um Also make sure to plan out how many uh bars you're gonna press because usually the die pressing process took way longer than expected, especially for just getting 13 to 15 bars. Usually took about maybe three lab sessions. So try to get or try to plan it out with the TA and see how many you can get just to make a good, reasonable what's it called, record of each bars and try to get as many as possible is what I'm trying to say. And also, this did happen, an incident where I knocked out a couple of bars, but so just make sure to not to know where you place your bars and not to accidentally bump them because you'll just lose all that progress.
Okay, so make sure you also have a scientific question going into lab. This lab, I mean, we haven't done the other ones yet, but I feel like it was very, like you get into lab and you have to do the stuff you need to do in order to get all of your bars done. So having a scientific question before you even get into the lab is super helpful because it cuts out some of that time. And like I said, you got to work quickly and efficiently. There is a little bit of room to play around, but if you're shooting for a high number of bars, then generally you just need to like get in there and do all of the things that you need to do. And if possible, our group contacted our TA, and we actually came in like outside of Monday, Wednesday hours to press our bars because there were so many groups vying for the press. And it just made it easier to come in on like a Friday morning or whatever to press all of our bars without any other group trying to also press their bars. And then one other thing we did that was helpful is putting our powder back into the ball mill to get rid of clumps and, other non-uniformities. Because it comes out, you have your dry powder and then you break it up and you can sieve it and grind it down as much as you want. But we found that it was useful to put it back into the ball mill and we got more fine particles. And then if you end up making bars that are like bigger width-wise, like kind of rectangular, like you see in the bottom right, do not put them in the 3-point bend test with that long side up. We put that bar in there, and you can see in Zane's picture, it's the one on the bottom right, it just kind of bent out and it didn't actually crack, and we got a really weird data point for that. So just put them in, the skinny way, and then it will break, and you should be good to go.